I didn't go to college.
Nope. 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 Nope.
Breaking news.
Turn the TV on right now, dude. This is huge. I'm gonna be on the news.
Whatever it is, it's not right on the teleprompter.
All right, let's go over your sources again. I want to hear it.
As for the first time ever, a hockey arena becomes a scene of violence.
We're going to tell this story. We're going to tell it right.
A woman is considered to be in her prime in her 20s and 30s and maybe 40s. Sorry.
Fucking thing sucks!
The transformation from news into entertainment is disconcerting.
2 of our 4 helicopters were hit, including the one I was in.
Thanks, Tom.
No one ever gives you the full story.
That newscaster.
I hate trusting anybody.
That bastard newscaster.
You can't have a free society without a free press.
Get another source.
How many fucking sources do you think we've got?
That's not
Journalism.
Welcome back for part 2 of our Environmental Elites series. I'm Dotto. We've had some gaps between episodes lately. I had to take a longer break than I had said at the end of the baseball-themed episode, but I have good news.
Good news, everyone!
We're going to be shortening the podcast format as the topics we've covered each episode so far offer so much more content and so many more examples of poor journalism. We're going to revisit those topics as series moving forward with the goal of ultimately making this show live on YouTube. That way, we can cover shitty journalism in real time with current up-to-the-day events. Today, on TNJ, we're going to reveal another weapon in the news media's manipulation arsenal, the failed follow-up. We've had glimpses of this already. In episode 1, we saw how Tony D and the CBS Evening News did not follow up on the Rhode Island hockey game shooter story in mid-February and instead told us that Savannah Guthrie's elderly mother was still missing for like the 10th day in a row. We also made failed story follow-ups a prominent part of our tariffs episode. We covered how news stations along the Canadian border speculated in 2025 that the tariffs would be devastating. And then we saw that hardly any station followed up on the $175 billion in revenue that arrived later that fall. Failed follow-ups plus much more are ahead on today's episode. Before we jump into this green lake of misinformation, please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you have not yet. We're going to be bringing you new episodes every other Friday now. We also debut clips and feature all our game segments on the channel, so hit the bell and keep an eye out for those. That's at TNJ Podcasts, same handle on Elon's X. And if you like your podcast in audio form, we're on Spotify, Apple, and all the others. Thanks for checking it out there, too. This is Lake Mead. It's a reservoir on the Arizona-Nevada border formed by the world-famous Hoover Dam on the Colorado River. It supplies water to Las Vegas as well as area farmland that's in the fucking desert.
That's fucked up.
And also other places in Nevada as well as Arizona and California. Now, Vegas's population has gone from 478,000 people to 678,000 people since the year 2000. That's a 42% increase in that population alone. Meanwhile, Arizona's population has increased 49% in that span, and California, well, we know about their water issues. But have officials in these places done anything to deal with supplying water to such an influx of people?
Dum 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 dum.
Who knows? News outlets there certainly don't cover anything that could make the idiots who steal your money every 2 weeks look bad. The US, like the planet, does periodically face drought conditions for several summers in the early 2020s. Now, I wish I could have shown you all the coverage of this doomsday drought. This is an audio-visual podcast, after all. Unfortunately, CBS and ABC don't have much coverage from their national news shows archived, it appears. I'm talking like CBS Evening News, ABC World News Tonight, that sort of thing. At least NBC has something still available. Here is their coverage from July of 2021. They clipped the anchor intro and toss. We're picking it up with the reporter lead here.
You know, it's dramatic when you see it in person, the level of water loss. And we'll go ahead and push in and show you on the rocks. And keep in mind, this is the largest reservoir in the United States, and it is at its lowest level since it was built. And you can see right there along those rocks. I mean, those are rocks that we are not supposed to be able to see, but because the water is at an all-time low, you can see that 140 feet vertical loss that we've had in the last 20 years. That is some 5 trillion gallons of water. And look, downriver you have farms, you have agriculture needs, you have cattle ranchers that need that water. And the states that we're talking about here, Arizona and California and Nevada, they're going to have to start curtailing the amount of water that they're pulling from this reservoir. So much of this can be attributed, of course, to climate change. We had a chance to speak to the state's climate coordinator.
Okay, pretty cut and dry. The reporter attributed some claims and observed what we can all see. Pretty decent lead compared to what we're used to seeing and hearing on this podcast.
With respect to Lake Mead and climate change, the climate change has really upset that supply and demand balance that otherwise would keep Lake Mead full. And the way that this is happening is when the atmosphere warms, it holds more water. So you're essentially sucking the the air is essentially sucking the landscape dry. It's drying out our plants, our forests, as well as our crops. So not only are we getting less supply because the natural landscape is thirsty, but we also have more demand because our agricultural crops require more watering.
And we will get to what is causing trapped air in a future episode. So this lady's almost on the right track of blame. Unfortunately, she's been fed plate after plate of steamy bullshit since she was in undergrad. Well, we had a strong start, but fizzled there with the official character. This was a cut-down Vosot, better known as a whip. The reporter stood and recorded it in one take, tossed it to a soundbite to be chosen later, then tagged. Then video and said sound were added after the fact. We just saw a pretty strong lead, at least for this day and age, so let's check out a weak one. This is from a year later, June of 2022, and this is PBS, and it's called Mega Drought Causes Perilously Low Water Levels at Lake Mead. And boy, do PBS bumble this intro.
A mega drought is choking the western and southwestern regions of the U.S. It's the worst drought in over 1,000 years in this country. This week, local officials in Southern California started restricting water use, including watering of lawns to once or twice a week.
Always good to see local officials test the waters of a river that's ripping away little bits of our freedoms over time. I don't overuse the water. You, the viewer/listener, doesn't overuse water. The people you and I involuntarily pay every 2 weeks, the public officials, the lazy ones who think they want a lottery job, they misuse and overuse the water. But what did PBS do so wrong here? Anybody notice? Well, unless they have a full team of scientists employed in their newsroom, PBS just declared that we have a 1,000-year drought with no scientific attribution or citation. Check it out again.
A mega drought is choking the western and southwestern regions of the U.S. It's the worst drought in over 1,000 years in this country. This week, local officials in Southern California started...
All right, this is an 8-minute package that blames climate change, not mismanagement by incompetent officials, which we'll find out this is exactly what this piece is meant to do. Come peep the propaganda.
In West, the mega drought is connected intimately with climate change, of course, and our story is part of our ongoing coverage of the tipping point.
The tipping point. The tipping point of what? The end of the world?
A lifeline of the American Southwest is shrinking, and with it, the country's two largest reservoirs are going dry. Just 30 miles east of Las Vegas sits Lake Mead on the border of Arizona and Nevada. It's the largest man-made reservoir in North America. Lake Mead pumps water from the Colorado River to nearly 25 million people. It's a major water source for residents and tribes in Arizona, Nevada, California, and parts of Mexico, and some of the country's most productive agricultural sites.
Americans have always preferred to be referred to as nations, by the way, like sovereign groups of people. Not tribes, but liberals. It's a modern movement. It's all based in their own radical biases of severe racism. We're here to help these poor people who can't help themselves. Meanwhile, the native guy's like, I can take care of myself just fine. I am a grown man. Okay, Ananantuk. You're a human like me, sure.
Nearly 40% of Arizona's water supply comes from Lake Mead. But the lake has been declining for decades due to rising temperatures and climate change.
We're 90 seconds into this package. You can see the news media just decides the science without attribution for climate change. It's hotly debated in the actual meteorology realm. And media lacks these citations for this subject more than any other socially engineered pseudoscience. Let's check out a classic fake news manipulation technique here. Reminder, the receding began in the 1980s, like we told you a few minutes ago.
A bathtub ring exposes receding water levels over time. This is what it looked like in 1983. Fast forward nearly 4 decades, Lake Mead is now 178 feet lower and continuing to shrink.
I mean, what kind of picture did they just paint us? That disgusting, wasteful humans have been sucking the water out of the EPA mafia's precious earth, right? They just gave us an idea that the lake is continuously being sucked dry, and I'm not sure that this is the case. However, the lack of balance in any climate story looms over all of modern journalism.
I would have expected better from Jimmy the scumbag.
Well, this was years ago. How's Lake Mead doing now?
Then and now.
Pulling up the numbers and photos, why, golly, well, saints preserve us. It has stabilized. Lake Mead has experienced a partial recovery since hitting its record low in July of 2022, thanks to a mix of unusually wet weather in 2022, 2023, and major water conservation efforts by the lower basin states, aka Arizona, California, Nevada, tribes, and federal incentives. As of late March 2026, the lake sits at 1,062.4 feet elevation with about 33% of capacity. This is roughly 21.5 feet higher than the July 2022 record low and reflects a net gain from the 2022 low point. The levels have fluctuated and remain far below historical levels. Here's a chart. Here's what folks were covering. We saw the 2021 story and 2022 stories. Got as low as 1041, and here's our latest reading here from, we went as far as March of 2026 to that 1062. Has it fully recovered? No. Those big white walls are still visible, and the water still looks pretty down. But did you even know that? Did you learn it from your local news? Because you would have thought it wouldn't have existed in 2026 because of all that news coverage from before. Let's see if these stations followed up on the lake's stabilization and really put the fire to the feet of the officials who fucked up the resources that they're overpaid to oversee. As always, good on the local stations, but we gotta check on them big dogs. No prominent recent stories on Lake Mead recovery or stabilization appear on CBS Evening News, ABC World News Tonight, or NBC Nightly News. Coverage from these networks has focused on the reservoir's long-term decline due to drought, climate factors, and high water demand on the Colorado River. Key past segments, mostly 2021, 2023, highlighted record low water levels, exposed lakebed features, and related issues. As you can see, it goes on to show us specifically what they did to kind of rally up panic for a, disappearing lake, that and Lake Powell in that same region, same area. You can see the low water levels, but I think blaming climate change may not be the best route to go when clearly there are people who are paid to oversee these sort of things. Let's check out the current context here. Lake Mead has seen minor seasonal fluctuations and some short-term rises from better snowpack in the certain years, but it remains far below historical averages with no full recovery. Federal projections, the Bureau of Reclamation, indicate ongoing challenges. Level 1 shortage conditions continuing, potential for new record lows by 2027. We'll keep an eye on that. Possibly below the 2022 low of 1,040 feet we just looked at. And this third bullet here of examples is risks to hydropower and water allocations for Arizona, Nevada, California, and Mexico. Conservation efforts reduced usage and occasional wetter periods. Now, what's led to the stabilizations, we're going to take a look, but it was really communities, local communities, coming together. Conservation efforts, reduced usage, and occasional wetter periods have provided some stabilization or slower decline, but experts describe the situation as precarious rather than recovering. Okay. No major 2025-2026 evening news segments frame it as a recovery story. We're just looking for stabilization. We're looking for any kind of coverage. Yikes. Alright, the local stations have done some stabilization coverage. Fox 5 Vegas even uses the term recovery here above stabilization or instead of stabilization. And this lady's what we like to call in the business a real yucker. She's a real yucker here. Nobody talks like this.
Fall and the snowfall across the West. One expert says Lake Mead is on the mend. Take a look at the level today, 1,075 feet. Now, keep in mind, the last time we were at the same level, it's this orange line right here, from May in 2021. You might remember the famous upright boat from 2 years ago when the lake levels plummeted to the record low. It's now, look at it now, completely underwater. One researcher says Lake Mead is on the mend, but only because of conservation and cutting back our water use.
Juxtaposes how the boat looked a few years ago, sticking up out of the mud, and now it's got a buoy over. It's completely covered by water. It's a nice lead, actually. Alrighty, the package starts with the same shit, the boat example, so we'll scroll ahead to our character.
This week, it's now 35 feet higher.
It's really great to see Lake Mead on the mend. What it tells me is the conservation efforts are really working.
Professor Andrea Gerlach heads the Udall Center at the University of Arizona, working to help government and scientists collaborate to manage the Colorado River system. She says Lake Mead is on the mend only because of the water cuts approved by the feds last fall.
Gee, thank you for the permission to fix their water shortage problem, feds. It goes on to highlight the pact between 3 states and Mexico to conserve water. Again, if officials did their jobs correctly in the first place, they wouldn't have to rely on localized community efforts like this. The package goes on to say that the weather aided in the stabilization too, which doesn't help whichever new calamity they're making up this decade to create more overreach and taxes. Check out part 1 of this series for that. We put that meme about decade-by-decade weather emergencies resulting in more taxes to the test. Anyway, here's the news on the weather with an attempt to spin it.
Through 2020, 977 gallons of water.
Every drop counts. Every little system conservation, any little effort, it adds up.
Our previous wet winter helped tremendously, but there will be no telling for months whether this winter will even help. Colorado climatologist Becky Bollinger of the Colorado Climate Center explains.
We need about 10 of those years to completely solve the Lake Mead and Lake Powell issues. And so that's definitely not going to happen.
How can you know for sure that that's definitely not going to happen, though? Or can Fox 5 ask at least? For me?
92% of the water comes from the upper basin. This year so far doing okay.
What the hell did that stat have to do with anything? 92% of the lake water? The Colorado River water? To where? And there's more random attribution to the general term scientists here, this time by the reporter.
Never going to get Lake Mead back to where it was.
Scientists forecast the Southwest will get hotter and drier in coming decades.
Okay. Which scientists?
The Gambletron 2000 says the winner is Cincinnati by 200 points.
Alright, enough what the scientists say in news media. I think we need to ditch that term and instead use researchers at the will of government funding, say. It may be something like that.
May not be perfect, but it's still the best government we have. For now.
Let's close out her package here.
Fire way to preserve our lake levels is more conservation.
What we're missing is a long-term.
More conservation. Preserve our lake levels is surefire way to preserve our lake levels is more conservation.
What we're missing.
The only surefire way to pass the Southwest will get hotter and drier in coming decades, so the only surefire way to preserve our lake levels is more conservation.
What we're missing is a long-term solution. Our behavior has an absolute direct impact on what those lake levels look like.
We'll skip her tag. It's about the pact expiring this year, which will require some more money needed to be spent on replacement or renewal. And she talks about another idea of draining Lake Powell to fill Lake Mead. Lake Powell is in a similar area and similar situation. I guess I'm hoping the folks at Fox 5 asked what these conservation efforts were, or if any equipment or resources were spent organizing the efforts. Some missing questions there, I think. Here's a look at those water cuts and conservation efforts from another local station. There is a news story with this, but we're going to read this article first. It also comes with this sweet Nats video of sweeping views of the lake this spring. We'll keep it here as we read. It's from KLAS 8 News Now in Las Vegas. It's a CBS affiliate. It's owned by Nexstar. This website's a little rough. Headline: Nevada, California, Arizona propose water plan pushing cuts to 20%. I like the use of the term pushing, as news stations often struggle to show that they truly are, quote, on your side. Saying that officials are pushing kind of puts them in an overreaching light that should get more attention, in my opinion. But They make officials look like they have a plan here as well, though. So maybe a little more feet to the fire language instead. I mean, this is their mess, the officials, their mismanagement, and these cuts are already on top of the cuts mentioned in the last package from previous years, plus federal bailout money. I'm not sure how you can convey all that in a headline, but let's just say I was pushing for more there.
That's not funny!
I know. This is from May 4th, 2026, and it's by Greg Haas. He's most likely a digital producer, as the video component from the news had a different reporter. Let's get into it. Water officials from Nevada, Arizona, and California say that they will make extra contributions by reducing their use of the Colorado River. Combined with earlier commitments, the proposal cuts add up to a total of about 20% of the state's water allotments. Jesus. So only the officials are doing this. I feel like people are. People, the ones who didn't do much to affect this, are suffering the consequences. The plan, released Friday by these three states, would stabilize the river through 2028, according to a joint news release. It adds just a piece of paper saying this. What did the news release say exactly? Let's see if Greg fills us in. It adds an extra contribution of 700,000 acre-feet of water to cuts already in place. An acre-foot is literally the amount of water it takes to cover an acre of land in water a foot deep. So with a foot of water, maybe write it that way. That's 325,000 plus gallons, enough water to supply 2 to 3 households for a year. It's a lot of water. Las Vegas relies on the Colorado River for 90% of its water, but recycling has consistently allowed southern Nevada to use a lot less water than Nevada's full allotment. Recycled water is returned to Lake Mead, and that is subtracted from the state's consumptive use, quote-unquote, of the river. After all the math, southern Nevada uses about 2/3 of its water allotment. Nevada is seen as a conservation and recycling model for other states to follow. Yeah, it's in the desert. So the southern's doing better? Okay. I like that they use allotment. Like if we ran out of utility water, the government would be able to hold us back from taking it. Allotment. Psh. It's a quote here. This proposal is about moving from ideas to implementation, John Etzminger, general manager of the Southern Nevada Water Authority, said in a statement included in the news release. We'll get into authorities down the line. Holy hell, you think NGOs are bad? Wait till you hear how much of your government stolen money is wasted on your local train depots. More quotes, it pairs real measurable water contributions with sensible dry condition operations at Lake Powell and across the upper initial units. Now is the time for every water user in the basin to double down on water conservation as we face historically dry hydrology. Jesus Christ. Let's see what the news story that aired later that evening does with it. It gets more into this kind of north versus south pissing match over water conservation because the state with the desert in it does the best job not watering grass. Go figure. We'll jump ahead to a reporter package.
Southern Nevada has done our part to conserve water, like removing non-functional turf and limiting water restrictions, which has allowed us to use significantly less water, only 2/3 of our allotment, while upper basin states like Colorado are asking for continued mediation to reach a deal.
Again, as if they think they can keep our water from us.
And we need to act. Nevada, California, and Arizona are voluntarily offering to save an extra 10% of the river water. That's on top of existing conservation with approvals from officials per state.
You can talk about mediation all day, but where the states are is just at a position where they're relying on their interpretations of the law of the river.
Kyle.
Alright, so it's explaining the problem at hand caused by officials and being solved by the people who decided to conserve water and buy those scumbags a little more time. Let's see if KLAS takes that angle that people have so desperately craved from journalists over the last few decades.
Kyle Roerink is the executive director of the Great Basin Water Network, a coalition focused on water conservation.
What we're seeing in the letter is really the most forthright analysis that we can say right now where the states are, but they're thinking that by August, there is going to be something a little bit more concrete.
Colby Pellegrino from the Southern Nevada Water Authority says levels at Lake Mead continue to drop and could hit record lows soon.
We're going to end the year around elevation 1035. That will be near historic lows for the reservoir.
Well, that's some pretty finite language. Doesn't seem like the reporter pushed back here either.
Because of the really bad hydrology that we're experiencing this year.
The proposal also addresses Lake Powell water levels. The federal government is already keeping more water in that lake instead of releasing it downstream to Lake Mead.
We've essentially built a buffer for this community that we can weather this 50,000 acre foot reduction in our allocation and still have a little bit of unused water that we can either store or help dedicate to the system.
I guess my question is, again, why wouldn't officials have already thought ahead on this? We'll skip her tag. Seems like 8 News now skipped over the short recovery/stabilization period and got right to government ball washing. Other than the absolute claim from the character, this story is pretty nuts and bolts actually, just not from the right angle, I would say. Also, we haven't heard any man on the street sound. I understand these are officials planning big expensive projects and they need their airtime. But I say, always throw in an average person's take. They're the ones paying your advertisers on the most part. Moving on. In the same vein of the national news not following up on their Lake Mead panic, nor species coming off endangered lists every day, we're going to check in on the Great Barrier Reef, going global. The famous coral corral has faced periods where the sun gets so hot that the algae around the coral dissipates to almost nothing, causing it to get bleached. It happens to reefs all around the world periodically, but the media wants us to fuck with nature anyway. Scientists didn't really start recording mass bleaching events until the 1980s. So 40 years? 45? Sure, it was in the decade after the 1970s where Congress enacted dozens of environmental laws, paying millions and millions of dollars to scientific causes in nature, did little if anything to curb so-called environmental disasters, and in fact mainly stifled American freedoms to interact with said nature, all on taxpayer dime. But hey, that could be a coincidence. Well, anywho, scientists at the will of government funding, remember that, say big bleachings began in 1998. We saw some significant news coverage in 2022, however. Let's see how the big dogs covered it. And like Lake Mead, not a lot of audio-visual access to doomsday climate coverage after said coverage has recovered or stabilized. We got a couple articles from CBS we'll skim real quick, and one from ABC. This is disastrous news! Great Barrier Reef again hit with widespread bleaching. It's from March of 2018, no author, just world news coverage, so maybe the wires, but CBS has it on their site. Dateline, Canberra, Australia. The Great Barrier Reef has again been hit with widespread bleaching. Authorities said Friday as higher than average ocean temperatures off Australia's northeast threaten the already struggling World Heritage Site. So even if it's your own meteorologist, you gotta cite the source there. You're reporters, folks, not scientists. Surveillance flights over the reef revealed damage due to heat stress ranging from minor to severe bleaching across 1,243-mile network of corals, the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority said. So there's a source who certainly wouldn't benefit from more funding following an, again, quote, disastrous event. Pretty picture. Here's some quotes now. Bleaching has been detected across the marine park. It is widespread but variable across multiple regions ranging in impact from minor to severe, the authority said in its weekly update. So what's making it disastrous? Any hard numbers or what? Over the past week, sea temperatures throughout the marine park ranged between 0.5 and 2 degrees Celsius above average, while the far north and inshore areas recorded temperatures between 2 and 4 degrees above average. This is in March, so late summer down there, early fall. Another quote, there have also been reports of early mortality where heat stress has been the greatest, the authorities said. Better get in the big words. Plants die, and regrow. It's like a circle of life thing. That makes this cycle news. This article goes on with a bunch of crap. UNESCO making a trip there in the coming June of 2022. It also goes on to explain how bleaching occurs. It has a history of the, quote, 5, quote, mass bleachings since 1997 here, not 1998. Then it can't even decide when they began to record bleachings.
Name's Artemis. I have a bleached asshole.
And for some reason, UNESCO is going to take away World Heritage status from the reef. That's what this June visit is about. Seems like a money grab. And we'll follow the coins on that one in future episodes. Okay, back to our question. What is making this, quote, disastrous? What are the hard numbers? Let's skip ahead a couple of months to May of 2022. 91% of reefs surveyed along Great Barrier Reef affected by coral bleaching, a report finds. Affected in what way? In which way? A plant near the equator that's been 100% in the sun daily during the last 3 summer months down under. Anything can affect anything else if it moves in nature and time and space, I think. No? Isn't that the butterfly effect thing in time travel movies and shows? So just how affected? I haven't had a terminal illness, but people close to me have. And I bet a lot of folks can say that as well. So that makes a headline like 91% of people are affected by cancer, quote unquote. A true statement and a fair statement now then, I guess. There's something misleading about it though, isn't there? 91% of reefs surveyed along the Great Barrier Reef in Australia were affected by coral bleaching to some degree, okay? To some degree. During the summer of 2021-2022, because it's Australia, so it goes over the year. According to a government study, researchers say climate change is the greatest threat to the reef, and that the warming ocean is a key factor behind the recent mass bleaching event. I guess we're switching to warming oceans. We saw in part 1 of this series how the clock struck midnight for all Al Gore and his buddies after 25 years of their bullshit. Check it out after this if you haven't. The oceans didn't rise like they said they would, so now they pivot to warming oceans. They have a direct quote. I guess that's what we can call it here in the next paragraph. Quote, climate change is escalating and the reef is already experiencing the consequences of this, the study stated. Unfortunately, the events that cause disturbances on the reef are becoming more frequent, leaving less time for coral recovery. They pulled this from the abstract of the study, I can tell you that right now. A brief summary of all the work done by researchers at the will of the government funding, who are at the personal funding will of special interests. See, I've already added our own news phrase. They don't have to attribute broad statements like those. That's why they do it. In the annual Reef Summer Snapshot, conducted by the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority, remember them? The Australian Institute of Marine Science, and the Commonwealth Science of the Industrial Research Organization. Sounds like a lot of money being wasted on people all telling us the same thing, that they need more money to study it. Scientists conducted surveys of 719 reefs across regions. Aerial surveys revealed that 654 reefs displayed coral bleaching. To what degree, though? We already said some spots can be minor. Same question from before, how much is too much? The central region, including reefs from Cape Tribulation to the Whitsundays, saw some of the most severe bleaching on both inshore and offshore reefs, the study found. The southern region reported highly variable bleaching, with some shallow water coral communities reporting no bleaching, while others exhibited major to severe community bleaching. So we got to mention that there's no bleaching in there then. And in the northern region, shallow water coral also varied from minor to severe bleaching. Again, these reefs are out in the sun all day long. Does the tribulation region experience the most bleaching during summers anyway? That's something maybe we can look into, even when it's unconcerningly minor / not reportable, like not at all. And in the southern region, where I'm guessing it's cooler and farther from the equator, they report there was none at points. The article gets back into the 5th biggest bleaching narrative in 7 years, and more history on the reef like before. I mean, it's a pretty alarmist looking headline and lead for some maybe hard to explain science at best. Let's head over to ABC. We're going to go back in time to December of 2020 now for some initial bleach news. Perhaps some forewarning of the somehow too complicated to articulate severity of the 2022 bleaching we just read through.
The situation is expected to deteriorate as newscasters whip the city into a panic.
It's called The Great Barrier Reef has deteriorated to critical level due to climate change. Gotta use important warning and panic words. Disastrous, critical, mortality, I think we saw in one of the quotes. To begin, the conservation status of Australia's Great Barrier Reef has declined from significant concern, quote, quote, to, quote, critical concern due to increasing impacts associated with climate change, a new report has found. The damage to the reef, link to bump out so you can't get what the damage is because I guess they can't summarize it for us or paraphrase it, is a result of ocean warming, acidification, and extreme weather. So now we've added 2 more, or I guess we took those 2 away by 2022, since this article is from 2020, which has resulted in coral bleaching according to the International Union for Conservation Nature's 2020 World Heritage Outlook report, which tracks whether the conservation of the world's 252 natural World Heritage sites is sufficient to protect them in long term. Okay? The process of coral bleaching occurs when water is too warm, the algae in the corals, blah, blah, blah. We've seen that already. I'm sure those 2 groups do that all for free, right? So do these groups only exist if, quote, disasters exist, I guess? Maybe. Article goes on to say the World Heritage Sites are threatened by climate change, which said that, money. So with the World Heritage Sites threatened by climate change, it says only more money to governments can help, the usual. Alright, well, we saw different time periods of, quote, mass bleachings, though again, not sure if we were properly told what made these events, quote-unquote, disastrous. What about periods of recovery? Did media follow up? Yes, but they had the excuse train chugging.
You lack a discipline.
Nuh-uh, don't lack a discipline.
It seems like CBS has recently removed an interview they did with a NOAA guy regarding recovery. You click on this video and you get ads for infinity. Not the car, like they go on forever. No video ever loaded for me after I had previously watched it and chose it for this episode as content. There is a summary here though. Here's an ad. Is the Great Barrier Reef recovering from coral bleaching? A new study by the Australian government suggests the Great Barrier Reef is showing substantial signs of recovery, quote, 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 from coral bleaching, which has damaged or destroyed 30% of the 1,400 miles. Oh, now it's lost 100 miles. Can't even decide how long it is. Since 2016, Mark Eakin, coordinator of NOAA Coral Reef Watch, joined CBSN's Tanya Rivera with more. He did not, or I should say he did, but we're not allowed to watch it anymore. They're doing all they can to keep the recovery coverage vague, I guess. We see damaged or destroyed 30%. Again, is 29% damaged to varying degrees of minor to extensive, like we watched in the other ones? And 1% destroyed, or 20, or is it 15% substantially damaged and 15% destroyed, half and half? That data, is that available in the study? Who knows? The media refuses to dig deeper into these numbers. Is it laziness? Perhaps. I'd say more than half the time, yeah. Or maybe just stupidity. Curiosity is a mark of intelligence. I see and had worked for a decade and a half with people who just wanted to be on TV for attention, and then masquerade as a journalist to cover it up. They're theater kids. I got into journalism because I was curious. I felt weird having my face next to my columns even. This was before I was forced into television just for career survival alone, and then spent a long time there. I think the attention-seeking nature of TV news in general seems to show a lack of curiosity from today's and most of history's visual media. NBC did that web video narrative thing rather than attach their news personnel to the reporting. Here's their coverage to cool music. It's got that kind of creepy music going with it, but the title is Great Barrier Reef Shows Signs of Recovery from Bleaching, scientists say. So good on NBC again. This is from 3 years ago, so 2023-ish. Showing all the cool fish swimming around, all the cool visuals of the reef, almost like a nature film. Australia's Great Barrier Reef shows signs of recovery but remains vulnerable to increasingly frequent bleaching, marine scientists have found. More shots, scuba divers in the reef, looks like scientists with clipboards, okay. Long-term monitoring by the Australian Institute of Marine Sciences found that recovery in the central and northern stretches was better than in the south. More swimming around, more looking like a nature film underwater. It's all underwater. The southern region has lost coverage due to crown and thorn starfish, marine invertebrates, which feed on others. And we're going to hear from Australian scientist guy at the will of government funding. So there you go, NBC. And we also have CBS going the complete opposite direction and sounding panic alarms. We'll save that one for a later date, though. It's game time.
It's game time. Game time. Game time on the TNJ pod. Gonna guess what they said next on the TNJ pod. Was it racist? Was it sexist? Or all of the above? Was it inspirational or over sensational? Of course it was.
This guy was mayor of Fort Wayne, Indiana in the 1930s and 40s and then served again briefly in the 1950s. His name is Harry Balls. And in 2011, Fort Wayne held an online poll for naming a new city/county government center. Because that always seems to work out. Asking the internet. Harry Balls Government Center won by a huge margin. Local TV stations covered it and the story went national. Local stations like WANE, Wayne 15.
A former Fort Wayne mayor is getting some national attention. Thousands of people voted online to name the new city-county building in his honor.
But that probably won't happen because of his name. News Channel 15's Don Austin is here to explain.
All right, how many times will Donnie here say Harry Balls in the next 2 minutes? Is it A6, B5, C4, or D 10 times? Our answer's coming up right after this.
Next, you can't handle the tease.
Coming up next.
You tease me.
Coming up next.
Check out this ever-burning pile of tires in Kuwait in the Middle East. Now check out China. And we can't forget India. You still think plastic straws are the problem? That don't matter here in Captain Planet's America. The greener we get, the less green our wallets get. And that fact, plus those pics, tell me they sure don't seem to be doing much about pollution around the world anyway. Our Environmental Elite series continues 2 weeks from today at TNJ Podcast on YouTube and X. Back to the game.
Game time.
How many times will this young Fort Wayne, Indiana reporter say Harry Balls in the next 2 minutes? Is it 6? Is it 5? Is it 4? Or will he say it 10 times? Let's watch the package.
Mark, the people voted, and the top pick so far with more than 10,000 votes is the Harry Balls Government Center, named after one of the city's longest-serving mayors, but not everyone's on board with that name.
Well, Harry Balls apparently was a great mayor. That's what I'm hearing. If you read the comments, actually, people are very serious about what he did as mayor.
Just pause it real quick. Is this not the quintessential local bureaucrat, volunteer, maybe even? Hopefully. Nope. I'm sure she's very nice. She seems like a sweet person and all. But do you think she was looking at all these troll comments and thought they were sincere? Harry Balls stuck to his guns, especially when the heat got turned up. Oh, so many passionate historians in our community. Also, anybody hear how the lady pronounced balls a second ago? That will come up again.
The family was, it's part of our history. I think it's part of the history we're proud of.
To pick the new name for the building, people went over to feedbackfortwayne.org. They made suggestions and voted. The overwhelming front-runner was the Harry Balls Government Center. Harry Balls was the mayor of Fort Wayne back in the 1930s and 40s. He even served a term in the 1950s. We have a street named after Harry Balls. So what's the big deal about naming the new city-county government building after him?
I feel that it'd be an honor to have him
Jimmy
have a
Balls
building named after him.
And so many people have voted for it. I say let the people have the say.
But this isn't an election where the person with the most votes wins.
We want to look at something that reflects both the city and the county. So, we're looking for something that isn't just a mayor, for example.
So is this all about the name? Some people think the Harry Balls Government Center would make Fort Wayne the butt of jokes. After all, the family did change the pronunciation of their last name from Balls to Bells. Jim said it was his grandmother's idea.
Don in Wayne 15 waited more than 90 seconds to tell the viewer about the name change. I like it. Well done. They knew what they were doing. In that time, Don managed to sneak in 5 hairy balls in that one solitary balls we just heard. But are the balls done bouncing out of his mouth?
At the time when Harry was born, the connotation wasn't there, like it's come up through the years. So I think she was just trying to save the family a little bit of embarrassment, especially her children.
Jim thinks a Harry Balls Government Center could be great for the city of Fort Wayne.
Well, I think it would put us on the map, for one thing. I know there's been a lot of controversy about it. I think a lot of people are going to snicker about it and laugh, but after it dies down, I don't see any problem.
No more Harry Balls in his tag. Our answer was, of course, A. He did 6 times. 6 times the guy had to drop some Harry Balls on his listening audience. City officials ultimately overruled, of course, the public vote and named it Citizens Square instead, citing the potential for jokes we just heard in that package. You don't say. Like how a bunch of squares overruled the will of the citizens. That's today's lesson. Don't trust environmental panic stories from the media. There's always someone pulling those financial strings, and we'll explore that down the road soon enough. Until next time.
There were no survivors.
Stop!
A local family is forced out of their home by ghosts. Who are they going to call?
Ghostbusters, Tom?
No, Diane, their insurance company. That's just stupid what you said.
That's not right. Ban all music? In this reporter's opinion, the answer, sadly, is yes.
I made a mistake in recalling the events of 12 years ago.
Fucking thing sucks.
You know what really grinds my gears?
Token, people really enjoy seeing African Americans on the news, not hearing it.
You got a fucking problem, bro? Look at my mustache. Do you think it tickles women when I kiss them?
No.
Journalism.